Good afternoon, everyone. You guys want to give me a round of applause or anything? There we go. All right. Get that blood flowing. All right. So what I want to talk to you about is something that I see and I talk to my customers. So as Ray said, I'm a technical solutions architect or technical security architect with Cisco Systems. And one of the things that my customers see, and you see it as well in the news, is that people are spending money. They're buying firewalls, they're buying WAFs, they're buying NAC solutions, they're buying endpoint solutions. But guess what? They're still being compromised. They're still being hacked because there's a paradigm shift that is happening. So you need to also understand this paradigm shift to help better protect your environment and yourselves. So as I go through this talk, I got to have a disclaimer that anything that you see or say or that I hear, that you hear, that's inappropriate doesn't have to do anything with my employer. If you also hear something that's cool and thought-provoking and innovative, it doesn't have anything to do with my employer as well. That's why I take all the credit. Now imagine this, since you are students, right? You know that there's a keyword search. So you go out and you get all the keyword, the buzzwords, the Python, the Linux, the Metasploit, the Kali, the Splunk, the Symantec. You get all these buzzwords, you put it on your resume, then all of a sudden you get hit by a company called Come By Security. They offer you a job, you go through the interview process, and you join their red team. After you join that red team, because you are a go-getter, you get your second cert. So now you are a certified ethical hacker. You are a go-getter because now you become the team lead. So you leading a team of like 5 or 10 people. Then you know what happens next? Money, right? Hopefully you get a promotion, you ask for more money. So now you live in the dream. You're living a life. You're the envy of all your friends. You're the talk of the town. Your grandmother, your mother, they're all proud of you. Now, you get your smarts from your grandmother. So she's reading the news one day, and she realizes that the company that you work for is, guess what? A Russian mob front company, right? Now, we watch enough TV and movies, and we see shell companies, and it's typically with finance. Can you imagine somebody setting up a front company that goes out to legitimate companies, that has an interview and hiring process? They have an HR department, they have a payroll department. They're going out to companies, they're doing RFPs and RFIs, and they're getting all these bids to win business, and they take that information, and guess what they do? They sell it, they misuse it. So this is that paradigm shift that I'm talking about, that we have to kind of change with the times, just like everyone else. Now, you guys have a fine program here as far as cybersecurity, and a lot of institutions, they do as well. But you know what the bad guys are doing? The bad guys have this thing called carding universities. You pay between $1,000, $10,000, and you get hands. Now, usually when you get hands-on with you taking a class somewhere, they give you what? A virtual environment. They spin it up in the cloud, or they tell you to use VirtualBox or VMware Player, and then you have your Kali Linux instance, then you get a copy of Windows 10 or Windows 11. But at these carding universities, you don't have a virtual environment. So the first thing you think about, well, how do you learn? How do you practice? Oh, they give you a real live network to practice in. So you're actually in the network of Federal Express, not to say they compromise. You're in the network of USB Bank, not to say they compromise, but they give you real world experience in cyber at a company. Now they have job placement and career services here, right? The bad guys do too. They got career services, they got job placement as well, but it's not with a Fortune 500, it's not with a Fortune 1000, it's with other bad guys, because the cyber industry is a $6 trillion industry. Now, somebody told me, I read in the line, that by 2025, it's going to be a $25 trillion industry. You really don't know, because it's not like the bad guys report how much money they earn, right? But you do know that in these job postings where they try to recruit people and pay them $20,000 a month. That's a lot of money. Now, you have to think about, you're entering the world of cyber. You're going to develop a particular skill set. So HackerOne, if you guys are not familiar with it, is part of a bug bounty program. So with HackerOne, they talk about 81% of most of the people, they're self-taught. So as you're doing your classes, as you're doing your work, your curriculum, you also want to keep in mind that you have to have a component and be passionate and be self-taught. So you have to learn a little bit outside of the classroom. Now, think about this. You don't even have to get a job. You can get a career finding exploit development on your own. If you find an exploit, 3 things can happen. You can tell the company that is exploited. They give you a pat on the back and maybe give you a T-shirt. You can release that exploit in the wild, and somebody in a 3-letter organization will come talk to you, or you can sell it on the legitimate market. Now, just in case some people don't know the difference between an exploit and a vulnerability. A vulnerability is something that naturally happens. So imagine this. You have a Honda Accord. Nothing wrong with Honda Accords. But you get that recall in the mail, and all of a sudden they say the brakes on the Honda Accords 2011 stops at 20,000 miles. So every 20,000 miles, that Honda Accord will stop the brakes. That's a vulnerability. An exploit is I can make those brakes stop not at 20,000 miles, but at 10 miles, 1 mile, right? That's an exploit. So now think about this. You have people, all they do is find exploits and they sell it. And that's their career. So they can work remote and it pays pretty good. So this is just what you see, desktops and servers. The top pay is $1 million. When you start looking at mobile devices, the top pay is $2.5 million. Guess what? You don't have to have a certificate. You don't have to have a graduation degree. All you have to do is have that will and that passion and that love for finding holes and bugs and stuff. So think about that. Those are the things that you have to think about. Those are the things from a paradigm shift that this is big business. Now think about this. We see this stuff on TV. We see this stuff in the movies. And sometimes you see them getting away from it. But when you think about people robbing banks, you think about what? Somebody coming in, everybody get your hands up, give me your wallet, hands down, face down on the floor. I'm going to the bank vault. Don't trip the alarms, right? That's what we see from a banking perspective. But guess what? There was a $1 billion bank heist that happened in like 2015. Then there was another one the next year. And then there's another one. Then all of a sudden it stopped. Now, do you think it stopped because they got caught? Or you think it stopped because they got better? Which one? Caught or better? Probably better. And not only this, but say, for example, if you were that person that figured out how to steal $1 billion and you wrote up a nice little playbook because you document everything, how much would you charge somebody to get that same playbook? Right? I charge $1 billion. What if they don't have it? You want to make your money off of volume. I'll sell it for you. I'll sell it to you for $100,000. Here's my work. Here's my exploit. This is what happened. Do you think somebody will buy it? Hell yeah. Right? Imagine, then you go to the next person and to the next person. And sometimes criminals, what they do, they monetize just their hacks, their playbook, their script, right? Because there's a market for that. Now, when you think about a cyber criminal, these images pop in our mind. We think about the FBI most wanted. We think about that lone wolf guy, right? These are the images that pop up in my mind. And in your mind, you also think about nation state. You think about, hacktivists. But this is the cyber criminal today. This is Olga, right? Completely different. Not a James Bond criminal, James Bond girl. She looks like trouble, right? Now, this is her when she got arrested. So it's a paradigm shift because we have these preconceived thoughts in our head of what the criminals look like, and it's not the case these days. Now, we all familiar with software. So this is something called the black hole exploit kit. It's not around anymore. The guy got caught. He charges, at the time, $10,000 a month to use his software. Software as a service. We hear these buzzwords, right? The criminals do the same thing. But I know what you're thinking. If you had $10,000 a month, you're going to give it to some guy you don't know. How do you know it's work? And more importantly, what if it stops working? These guys have tech support too, because you're paying $10,000 a month, you're a value customer. And if you can see from the diagram, it looks by your operating systems, the country codes. It talks about the browsers that is using, all this stuff, $10,000 a month. See, these are what the criminals are doing. They're monetizing the stuff a lot better. Then you have to think about, well, what about the government? I got my phone, I got all these apps in it, but sometimes in some of these countries, the companies will work hand in hand with the government. So you don't know if the Russians are behind it. You don't know if the Chinese are behind it, right? So you got TikTok, but you don't know how much data is actually being sent out to the internet, right? So these are the things that you have to think about, because as a cyber professional, your employees are using these devices. So they're using TikTok and they're on your network. What data is being sent out? They join the wireless. Paradigm shift. You have to think about these things. Not only that, but everyone has had a USB charging cable before, right? You can buy one over $100 online. You plug it into your laptop, you plug it into your phone. Now it's still in your data. So now you have to do educational awareness for people to make sure that once they find something, they don't stick it in the computer. And if they stick it in the computer, make sure it's their own computer. Now, somebody plugged in the USB drive and the computer blew up. So now you have to think about all these things. Now, I know you guys think, you're praying about it. Bad guys got Bibles too. They got religion. So the fraud Bible is something that you can get. Now, I don't recommend you go out and download it, because you'll probably get a bunch of malware and spyware and everything on your computer or your laptop. But this is a playbook that I was talking about, where you can have step-by-step how to do fraud. I see some people taking notes. I hope they're not trying to take notes and figure it out and download it, right? These are the things that you have to think about. Now, why do you have to think about it? Because people make the best exploit. Somebody will always click on a link. Somebody will always go to a website they're not supposed to go to. It happens all the time. They see a picture, they click on the picture of the nice-looking cat, and guess what happens? Helter-skelter. Once you click on that link, now you have to think about the lateral movement of a device in the environment. So there's a saying that there's a desktop at every desk, and there's an ARM in every pocket. So what do they mean by ARM? They mean the ARM processor. We all have mobile devices, right? So that's what I want to get. I want to compromise that ARM device, travel through the network, make it look like it's Active Directory traffic. Now, how do I tell my legitimate traffic from my bad traffic? I can't. It's very complicated to do. So that lateral movement is key, because somebody clicked on a link with a picture of a cat. Now you got to work an extra 20 hours that day. Now, everybody has a plan till you get punched in the face. That's what Mike Tyson said, right? They sound good, they look good, they've been working out, they've been doing the bad work, but guess what? When I hit them, that plan goes out the window. So now you have to think about, what plan do I have? How do I deal with this stuff? Is that paradigm shifting in my mind to the point where I can understand these latest attacks? And more importantly, when you're at that job, or you're at that career, or that consulting company, you have to determine when you're going to pick up and call the bat phone. When do you need help? Understanding when and when not to go forward. So I'm going to help you out. So I go in and tell my customers, you don't have to go to the dark web to find stuff. You can just use Google and a good URL and a cheat sheet, and you can figure out a lot of stuff, because this is what the bad guy's going to do. So if you haven't heard of MITRE ATT&CK, that's a talk for something later. But one of the things is exploiting public-facing applications. Let me find something already out there that's vulnerable, remember we talked about that I can exploit, and half the battle is already done. So CSP Evaluator, something by Google. It goes out and it looks at the headers of a website. And based upon that header, it evaluates to see how secure it is. It determines if this website is acceptable to cross-site scripting. Now, what if you go for a company, you download the headers, you look at it, you just bring it up in the GUI, but you don't know anything about cross-site scripting. But we know there's YouTube University. You can find anything you want and figure it out. Right? There's another thing called security headers. You just plug in the URL and it will grade it. A, B, C, D, E, F. They also have something called R. All right? You want to make sure that it's not an F or an R or D or a C or even a B. You want to make sure you have A+ rating, but it also looks at your CSP, which is the Content Security Policy, to determine if you are susceptible to cross-site scripting. If you don't know what cross-site scripting is, you're going to go where? YouTube University. Now, there's a plugin called retire.js. It looks for vulnerable JavaScript vulnerabilities. You just plug it in, click on the red button, and you're going to see anything that's vulnerable on that particular website for JavaScript. If you don't have a good understanding of how JavaScript works, YouTube University, right? So we look at this stuff on TV, and you see somebody sit at a desk, and all of a sudden, I'm in, like in a minute. Or just give me a second, and they already hacked something, they already compromised something, but they don't show you the work that it takes to get to that particular point. It's not always just point and click. There's a lot of research behind exploiting an environment. Now, bug bounty hunting, complicated profession, as you may think. But there's a website, we talked about HackerOne, called openbugbounty.org. So if you're in a job interview and you want to be a security professional, as you're researching that company, put in that URL and see if they have any unpatched vulnerabilities. So in that interview, they're going to always ask you one thing. Do you have any questions for us? And that's when you ask them, hey, did you know that you had an unpatched web server since 2016 and it's publicly disclosed? And you know what that guy's going to tell you? You're hired. Or you're fired and get out the room and talk to the web developers, either or, right? But you still feel good about yourself. Now, email is the #1 threat vector. That's when you get those people to click on something, right? So now as an organization, you want to test to make sure that your organization is not acceptable to phishing and spoofing. So there's a tool for that. And all these tools that I'm showing you is free 99. So you know what that means? It's free. And some of them have what they call a student discount. So if you have .edu on your email address when you sign up for those free tools, they still give it to you for free 99. So this particular tool, MX Toolbox, it goes out and checks to see how susceptible you are to phishing and spoofing. When I go to a company and they don't have their DMARC set, policy enabled, you know what that lets me know? Either they forgot about it or they just lazy. Either or. But as a bad guy, it's going to make me go down that rabbit hole to see what else they're lazy about. If it's a misconfiguration, what else have they misconfigured? So this is my jumping off point, one of them. Now, the thing about phishing is, what they say, if you teach them how to fish, you'll have access for life. So there's this website called Have I Been Pawned? In this website, you can just put in a username. I put in corporate names for my customers and see what data breach that they're into. And based upon that data breach, guess what? They have your username, they have your passwords, they have all this stuff. But how do they monetize this stuff? They monetize it by this. Your name is in the breach. Let's say your name is in the Coinbase breach, right? They have your email address. So they're going to email you what? Hey, we want to confirm your purchase of 20 Bitcoins. And you're like, I didn't order 20 Bitcoins. I ordered Bitcoins. Let me log into my account because guess what they did? They gave me a link. So let me click on it and verify my account information. And then guess what? Now they just have your account information for real. So these are the things you have to think about. Now, there's another site called Dhash, and Dhash will give you the password. Not on all of them, but they'll give you the email address and the password, or sometimes they give you the hash value of it. And then you take that hash value, and then you just reverse the hash of it. Now, the biggest thing is trying to figure out what's exposed out there on the internet. Anything on the internet has basically two things, or three things. They have an IP address, they have a domain name. Because we don't remember IP address. You don't type in, 10.62.192.4 and Facebook page pop up. You put in Facebook, right? So you have the domain name and an IP address. So based upon that domain, I want to see what other domains are associated with whatever I put in. So DNS dumpster, put in the name, and I can figure out who I can attack and how much I can attack. Now, every security presentation always has a quote from Sun Tzu, so I had to include that in there. So Shodan, that is a website that goes out and it spiders devices. So just like Google goes out and spiders everything, these guys have a website that it goes out and it spiders and looks for devices. When it looks for these devices, you can figure out, well, based upon an organization, they have all these devices that are out there. So let me make it a little bit more plain. I want you to definitely take notes on this part. So I can find out SMB version 1. I can figure out TCP ports. I can figure out organizational names, Cisco system, IIT. I can find also Amazon S3 buckets. I can find anything that's connected to the internet that this website has spidered. So this is an example of one. I'm looking for SMB version 1. Nobody should be using SMB version 1. And if they are, it shouldn't be connected to the internet. But then you notice there's one that has a vulnerability associated with it. Now, what company is that, right? So it's just not one-off. It's multiple things that have this. So that threat research that you don't see when that guy sits at the computer and says, I'm done, I'm in, this is the part that you don't see. The hours, the minutes that it takes to get proficient at your craft, to have a stable of devices that you already have compromised and owned. Now, I'm going to give you an example. There's a tool most people are familiar with, Metasploit. Metasploit has been out for a very long time. Now, Metasploit, if you want to practice your hacks, you have Try Hack Me Now, Hackersploit, but back in the day, there was something called Metasploitable. It was a virtual environment that you can practice your attacks on. And in that virtual environment, it was a product called Apache Tomcat. Now, this was like 2010, right? Now, you can have walkthroughs, video, or pages to figure out how to exploit this with Metasploit. But guess what? It's 1 million. And I took the screenshot probably like 2 weeks ago. About 2 weeks ago, right? So now you have to think about there's companies that have this stuff constantly out there, right? So these are the things, that paradigm shift that you need to look for. Now, your Google Kung Fu, how well do you know this stuff? There's a website, Exploit Database, has all this stuff listed, right? Not all of them, but the majority of the stuff. So now as you go through and you're studying, you figure out what to put in your tool belt. There's another site, Intel-X. It goes through and it looks at files, paste bins, all this stuff that is out there on the internet. And if you're a student, you get a discount for signing up for this particular site. Now, what's the worst thing than getting hacked? Than getting hacked twice. Having your stuff already out there on the internet where someone else can find. And that's the problem that most people, they don't know where to find and look for this stuff, right? Greynote is another website. They got a free version, a paid version, but in the free version, you still get the chance to look at your organization and see what the world is thinking about. My favorite website is spiderfoot.net. It collapsed all these tools into that one GUI, that one ring to rule them all. All you have to do is put in a username, figure out what you want as far as passive or intense scans, and then you get a treasure trove of things, right? So let me see if the SSL certificate has expired. Let me see if the domains are out there. Let me look at the vulnerabilities. All of these things are readily out there. So I want you to think about this. Remember that time you realized you couldn't trust somebody? Either your friend, your neighbor, your significant other one? So that's what you have to think. You have to remember that I don't need to trust everyone, because sometimes accidents happen because of the shift. So before your day ends up like this, where everything is helter-skelter on the screen, and your boss comes in and asks you, what happened? How do I stop it? How widespread it is? I want you to think of the story of this young lady here. So this is Patricia. Patricia and her boss used to bump heads. Boss was younger, she was older, bumping heads. You know, she's old school, she's trying to do things a certain way. Patricia's boss goes on vacation. So now Patricia has the opportunity to make sure that I'm going to make sure everything is going well while you are on vacation. So an invoice comes in, and I can either ask my boss, who I've been bumping heads, I know if I call her on vacation, it's going to be helter-skelter for her, and it's going to be another check mark for her to get rid of me. I'm not going to disturb on vacation. I'm going to sign the invoice myself. So guess what happens when she signs the invoice? She's on the news. She's fired. She's being sued to get $200,000. So these are the things that you have to think about. You need to be ready for that paradigm shift before it hits the fan. All right? So the question at the end of the day that I talk to my customers is we talk about CYA. That's it. CYA. So any questions? I'll be here for the rest of the day. Stop by.